fall down. Mama, I'm fine, don't worry. Go back out to sea, sail home, sweet home, where the ships must go to get all cleaned up and put away.
Now that I know how the rest of that song goes, I just want to start singing along with it and all that. Anyway, hello everyone. Welcome to Friday Live with Galt Advocacy. I am not your normal host, Caleb. Today, Caleb's on vacation. He's with his wife, and I am taking over today. So, welcome. We're going to have a topic. We're going to talk about transitioning to adulthood today, and some of the things that go along with that. What's the best plan for your child? As they're approaching that age, how are you going to be handled financially? How are they going to be taken care of? Are they going to be their primary decision maker, or do they need someone else to make those decisions for them? Things like that. So we're going to handle all those topics. I'm going to give a couple of minutes for people to arrive, for people to show up. Welcome to everybody who's tuning in. Go ahead and drop a comment. Let us know you're watching. Drop a like, and then we'll get started. While we're waiting for people, I will just let you know, especially for those who are watching this later, that we do have some events coming up. I believe June is our next big event that we're going to be going down to San Bernardino. That's the one. For two events. There's a resource fair being held by the regional center in that area. That's the 7th, I believe. The 7th, that's a Saturday. And the next day, we're going to be holding our own seminar down there on Sunday, the 8th. So both those events are going to be in San Bernardino. So if you're in that area, come check it out. Come see us. And you can find more information about that on our website. And it's going to be at the Doubletree in San Bernardino. So let's see, we're already getting some people showing up. Hello, happy Friday. Good to see y'all. And so like I was saying, drop a comment, drop a like, and share this for anyone who has if you know anyone who has a special needs loved one who is approaching that age of adulthood, or maybe is already there and they're lost on what to do. Share this video with them. So I'm gonna get into several topics now. I'll admit right up front, I am not the biggest expert on this aspect of special needs, but I did a little bit of research, and we're truly gonna have a discussion here today. I'm not gonna be the end all and be all expert, but I'm gonna discuss some of the things, some of the topics. You guys can share your thoughts, share your experiences, and if you have any questions that I can't answer, we'll research those afterwards and try to give you some good answers later on. All right, so a big sort of overarching topic that I want to talk about with this topic of transitioning to adulthood is the decision of whether or not you are aiming towards independence or assisted living. That's going to be like the big split in the road of your child has special needs and is moving towards adulthood, but are they moving towards independent living or assisted living? And that's like going to be the big split that decides, where you're going to go. But not all things, are only for one or the other. Let's start with Regional Center. Regional Center is a great resource that continues on for life, but they're going to have to be making this choice too. They're also assessing and trying to figure out whether they're going to be putting their resources toward job finding, help, that kind of like occupational skills, towards, just financial assistance for housing, things like that. Or are they pushing towards, a group home setting and cared for living and making sure that they have the maximum amount of IHSS and SSI and all other programs they can get so that they'll be taken care of for life. Speaking of SSI, let's talk about that, because that's one thing that you might already have as a child, but it changes when you become an adult. So when your special needs loved one becomes an adult, their income is now no longer tied to your income. It's their own. And this does have a couple effects. One is that SSI now requires them to pay for their own rent and their own food to not get a deduction to their SSI. The rent, and this was actually changed fairly recently, that to continue getting SSI without getting the what's it called, assisted, it's some kind of deduction. I don't remember the exact name of it, but in order to not get a cut from your SSI, you have to be paying at least $334.33 in rent every month. Now, that it used to be a different number for every county, but that was changed recently. So no matter where you are, as long as your child is like if they're living with you still, they still have to pay you $334.33 in rent to not get any cut from their SSI. Now, if, for instance, for food and rent and other things SSI isn't supposed to cover, or is supposed to cover, but maybe the amount doesn't cover it, what can you do then? That's where some of the financial assistance programs come in. Now, the baseline, a good thing to have for a special needs child is a special needs trust. This is just, in general, a good thing to have where you can set money aside and it won't affect their assets. Because in order to keep SSI and other similar programs, they can't have very much money. They can't have much in assets. Has to, I think $2,000 is the limit for that. So instead, you set aside money in special needs trust where it's handled by a third party. A different person is in control of that, and that money isn't counted as part of their assets, even though it's still theirs. It's theirs, but it doesn't count as assets, and a third party, someone else, is in control of that money, and they can use it for things SSI doesn't cover. So it can go to other stuff. In some cases, it could even go to buying a house. It just can't go towards rent and things that SSI does cover. In addition to the special needs trust, there is another thing, and this is what I'll share some resources you can look up to find this information. But a CalAble account is sort of I don't know if it's a type of special needs trust, but it can go in conjunction with the special needs trust. It is, you can only have one account per person, and it only goes up to, I think, $100,000 total of what you can have in there. But you can use the money in CalAble account to do things for SSI. You can use it to spend on rent. You can use it for food. You can use it for things like that. And the person whose account it is, if you want them to be able to, they will be able to withdraw and spend the money from their own account without needing a third-party person to control it. So for perhaps a more independent special needs child, CalAble account's really good because, for one, they can actually put money that they earn into the CalAble account and then take it out themselves and spend it. Important thing to note, if they are using it for SSI, for food or housing, and they're going to withdraw the money from the account, they need to make sure they spend it that month, or else it's going to count against their assets. I know this is all just a lot of very wordy and very, dry. So it's not the most fun topic, but I do hope it's informative, and we'll keep it going. Besides that, CalAble account, I believe, is also non-taxable. So it's also another benefit it has over just the regular special needs trust. And it's fairly easy to set up. From what we saw, the only real downsides is that there's a $25 fee to open the account, and another $30, I think it was $37. That maybe that's a bit changed since then, but I think $37 per year to keep it open, which really no big deal. If it's not taxable, it's a pretty good deal, I'd say. And basically any disabled person can go there, and there are specific things that it can be used for, but it includes a lot of things SSI covers as well. If you have any questions about calable accounts and special needs trusts. A resource we recommend is Cookman Law. We'll probably put that down in the comment section, a link to their website. It's where I got a lot of this information, honestly, because I'm not an expert in any of this kind of stuff. So they have a lot of good information, and they do a lot of YouTube videos as well. And so if you want to get really deep, do a big deep dive into a lot of these topics, that's a good place to go. Now, I'm going to switch over to a topic that I'm, more personally involved with and have more of a information about, and that's conservatorship. Conservatorship, this is going to be more so. Conservatorship is going to be for someone who is more in the direction of needing assisted living for life rather than independence. But there can be some in between. It can be so we're talking about a limited conservatorship, and this is what we're when we say conservatorship, this is what we're talking about: limited conservatorship. It's best for those who cannot take care of themselves when they need assisted decision making assistant, essentially. And the big differences between it and, say, a power of attorney, one of the biggest differences is the mental state of the person that you're taking care of, right? We talk about what's best. Is a conservatorship best or a power of attorney best? Well, let's talk about power of attorney. Power of attorney is great when you have someone who is an adult, who has at least most of their mental functioning, but maybe they're getting older and their memory's not as good as it used to be, or their decision making is faltering. They're becoming elderly. Power of attorney is great because they can sign it and say, I want to give this person right to make these decisions for me, to make medical decisions, to make financial decisions, to enter into contracts, to control my real estate, things like that. And if it's a durable power of attorney, then if and when that person becomes unable to make decisions for themselves, becomes, isn't aware of what they're, of anything anymore, isn't aware of their finances and aware of things, then that person they put as their power of attorney can make those decisions for them. The issue is that if a person is already mentally unaware and unable to understand things or make decisions, if that person signs power of attorney, it's not valid. The court looks at this and says, the person who signed this power of attorney didn't understand what they were signing, then it doesn't do anything. It doesn't grant any powers. The court can say this form is invalid because the person wasn't competent enough to understand what they were signed to sign it. And so that's an issue that you might have and a consideration when a special needs child is becoming an adult. Do they have the mental capacity to understand what it is they're signing? Do they know that they're signing their rights away or giving someone else the right to make these decisions for them? If they do understand that, then the power of attorney may be correct for them, and it may do what you need it to do. But if they don't, then the conservatorship would be the way to go. This is important for things like IHSS, because if you have IHSS and you have a minor child who's on the program, and then they turn 18, if there's no power of attorney, no conservatorship, no nothing, then the county all of a sudden will switch over, and they're supposed to deal with your child directly and cut you out of the assessments, cut you out of the picture. Now, if your child's very severely disabled, oftentimes they won't do that because they know they won't be able to get the assessment done with your child. But if they can appear to be high functioning, can answer the questions, even if they have no idea what the answers are, they'll just say answers. Then if there's no conservatorship, no power of attorney, then the social worker is kind of required to just go with it and say, oh, well, your son's 18 now, and he said that he can cook. He said he's got a girlfriend. He can drive. He doesn't have a driver's license, but he said he could. And so, okay, so he doesn't need any services anymore. And they'll write you right off. So that is one of the reasons why a conservatorship or something along those lines is necessary. Now, if your child is high functioning and they want you to represent them as their representative for IHSS, they can sign that form. And if they understand the form, then it's valid. But if they don't understand the form, then it doesn't mean anything again. And that's why conservatorship might be needed. Now, let's talk about the powers of conservatorship. So like I was saying, we're talking about a limited conservatorship where you can pick and choose what you actually have control over. And I've seen a couple of people posted comments. Hi, Estella. Hi, Janine. I'll get back to your question in a little bit. So conservatorship has 7 powers it's separated into. And let me grab my notes so I get these right. So the powers are deciding housing, where they're going to live, accessing their confidential records for, I guess, paper, tax purposes, medical purposes, whatever is necessary. Entering into contracts on their behalf. So anything that you're going to buy or hire, real estate purchase, any of that. To give or withhold medical consent. So any procedures, surgeries, medications, if they want to put them on pills or whatever, that would be a right that you have as the conservator. To make education decisions about where they're going to go to school, what kind of education they're going to receive, that kind of a thing. To consent to marriage. And the last one is control social or sexual relationships. Now, the point of a limited conservatorship is that you do not have to take all 7 of these powers. If you believe that your child can make their own decisions on education and relationships, but financial decisions they can't decide, then the housing, the entering into contracts, the confidential records, you could take those powers, but leave the rest to them. Or maybe you do want them to be able to, decide who they're going to marry, but not where they're going to go to school. It all depends on what you think they are not capable of understanding and making intelligent decisions about. I'm going to address some of the comments now. I'll go back to Janine first. When you say it's not taxable, what about when the account makes money such as interest? Let me see if my cheat sheet that I got from the internet says anything about that. Yes, we're talking about the CalAble account. All I see is that it says that your income into the account is not taxed. I do not know if that includes interest. We'll do some research and get back to you with hopefully a more definitive answer later. Constance says, conservatorship is very expensive. Is there a program that will help a parent with some of the expenses? I don't know if there is a program. Some attorneys will do it for maybe cheaper than others. And yes, what Con said is very true. It is from what I've heard, and this could be outdated. It might be even more now, but I think from what I've heard, it's anywhere from like 8,000 to 10,000. And that was a couple years ago. I heard that, so I don't know if that's changed. We try to find other attorneys that we work with who will do it for cheaper. I don't know if we have anyone right now who's doing that. I believe technically, like legally, you can represent yourself in conservatorship, and that's, doesn't have much of a cost at all. But I have not heard much about how successful that is or how well it goes. So I don't want to say, oh, it's super easy, just go ahead and do that, just yet. And Priscilla said, what did I miss? Well, we talked a little bit about CalAble and special needs trusts. I can't go over everything again, but the big theme that I'm trying to get is when your child is moving towards adulthood, you want to consider whether you are aiming for independent living or assisted living. And that's going to be the big difference. Are they going to get a job and have their own income and just need a bit of, maybe financial assistance and financial security, maybe a little bit of help with decision making, or are they going to need total care from a caregiver in their home for their whole life? And, those are sort of 2 different tracks. There can be people that are somewhere in the middle, maybe they can't work a full-time job, but They still understand things, but this is the two big tracks. And the topic we were getting onto, conservatorship, is one of those big things where a person who's going to go towards independent living, they're not going to need conservatorship maybe at all. But someone who's going to need to be cared for the rest of their lives, conservatorship is the most secure option to make sure that they're not taken advantage of financially, or abused, or that they don't decide to go live out on their own under a bridge. Like, this is some of the things you can protect a person from with conservatorship that they, as an adult, if they're not conserved, could just go and do, right? They can just decide they want to leave your home. They want to, move across the country and who knows what, right? So that's some of the protections. And one last thing I'll say about conservatorship is that it is not guaranteed for life. Once it's in place, you can remove the powers. If you take the power to make medical decisions, to make financial decisions, enter into contracts, decide where they're going to live. If your child reaches a place where you believe that they are able to make those decisions on their own, they no longer need your assistance or your guidance, you can relinquish those powers and allow them to be independent in those areas. So it's not as scary as what sounds. I will talk a little bit about just sort of the basics of what the process entails when you do go for conservatorship. So you typically talk to an attorney, and they will interview you. They will interview your child. They decide that it's appropriate. They do have to, I believe, send letters to all other interested parties, basically everyone else in the family, just to make sure there's no one else who contests the idea that this person should be conserved by you. And then it's taken into court. They present their findings. I believe a secondary court person also investigates the case and makes sure that there's no abuse or fraud going on. If anyone else takes issue with the conservatorship, they will present their issues, and the judge makes a decision. And most of the time, it's just as simple as the attorney says that it's appropriate. The court investigator says, yep, this is appropriate. Usually no one is going to come and contest it, saying, oh no, I should be their conservator instead. Most of the time that's not going to happen. And so the judge will say, okay, good. You're their conservator now. It's not, I don't want to underplay how complex it can be, but it is not as scary as some people might think. So now I'm not sure what to talk about, because I am only somewhat prepared for this topic. Again, like I talked about, it's not something I'm super aware of. I'll just jump into another thing that I do know. In terms of when a person becomes an adult for IHSS, there are not a whole lot of things. I did talk earlier about how the social worker will talk to them and discuss with them instead of you if they're not conserved. There are a couple other small things that change. One is that they can now get time for domestic household chores. Now, some social workers will tell you that they also can't get meal prep and laundry and shopping and things like that till they're 18, but that's not true. They can actually get that at 17. But at 18, they can get domestic chores, which is basically housekeeping. Cleaning the house, making sure that there's nothing on the lawn, there's no tripping hazards or anything like that. And that is, I believe, 6 hours per week, or is it per month? It might be per month, actually. That you can get added on to their IHSS at that age. Another thing is that protective supervision is just a little bit easier to get at 18 years old than it is at 17. The reason for that is that part of the requirements for a minor to get protective supervision is that they have to be significantly more severe and need significantly more supervision than another child the same age. And that requirement doesn't apply to adults. Now, realistically, this doesn't usually affect 17-year-olds in getting PS because they're so close to being adults already that for them to need protective supervision, they're already quite significantly different than other children of their same age. So it's not usually an issue for 17-year-olds, but that is just one little thing that changes when they turn 18. Stella said, "Thank you for the preview. I'm having to consider conservatorship for my child." Well, it is something to consider, and like I was talking about, it's not necessarily necessary for everyone, but especially for children who are getting IHSS, who need assistance with most of their activities of daily living, and especially if they're getting protective supervision, we recommend it for any child who's getting protective supervision as they're turning 18. We recommend conservatorship because it's most likely they won't be able to make a lot of those important decisions safely. Like if they can't make important decisions to keep themselves safe just in their daily life, then we have a lot of concerns about them to make medical decisions or housing decisions or relationship decisions. So yeah, we do recommend it for people that age. And if you give us a call, we can try to look and see if we have any recommended attorneys that, we like I was saying earlier, we try to find ones who charge less than the going rate, but it always depends on what's going on. Teresa asks, Dakota, when someone tries to get protective supervision for their adult child with a power of attorney, is there a problem with that? Sometimes it is. Adult child is more so a problem than elderly, and I'll explain why. So a power of attorney comes in a few different forms. There's a regular power of attorney where it's just, I sign this document to say that I want this other person to make decisions for me or in addition to me, right? That's just a regular power of attorney saying this person's going to represent me for my real estate endeavors or for this court case. This person's my attorney. And it doesn't take away any of my powers. And that type of power of attorney goes away as soon as I want it to go away or as soon as I become mentally incompetent. If I lose my mind and I can no longer continue to consent to that power of attorney being in place, then it goes away. But the second type of power of attorney is a durable power of attorney. This is the one that I was talking about earlier. If you have someone who is elderly and they, as they're getting older, they want their child to make decisions for them. Sometimes these go in effect right away. Sometimes they go in effect when the person becomes mentally incapable of making these decisions. It depends on the exact wording of the document. But this durable power of attorney remains in effect for life for as long as the person, regardless of whether they understand the form anymore or not. That's the durable part of it. It remains in effect even if they can no longer understand the form. So the issue with an adult child signing a power of attorney is this. Either they understood it when they signed it and they still understand it now, in which case, why would they need protective supervision? If they understand this form well enough to sign away that they want someone else to represent them for, and to make decisions for themselves, then it's going to be hard to convince a judge that this person also needs protective supervision if they understand this, complicated legal form so well. On the other hand, if your child has always needed protective supervision, and that's your claim, you say this person's always needed protective supervision, but you got them to sign the power of attorney, the judge is going to say they didn't understand. You're claiming that they don't understand how to keep themselves safe, even very basic things about danger, about not crossing the street in front of a car, but you're saying they understood this complex legal document. And so the judge is going to say this power of attorney is invalid. And that's the issue we have. Now, in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases, if you go before a judge in a hearing and you have a power of attorney and the judge says, well, you're claiming that they didn't understand this form when they signed it, therefore it's invalid. In most cases like that, the judge will then make from the bench, in that very moment, will make a decision saying, in this matter for this hearing, because this person does not understand what they're signing and cannot choose a representative, I, on their behalf, will choose their closest relative, being their mother, who is here today, to be the representative for this hearing. That does happen, I would say, 80% of the time, let's say. 80% of the time, if a situation like this arises, the judge will choose the closest relative who is present to represent the child in this case. However, in many of those instances, the judge will then say that the child's representative is the mother and not the advocate or the attorney that they hired, and will say, your advocate has to leave or has to remain silent for the whole hearing. And that's the issue that we run into, is the judge will say, well, I'm going to allow the mother to represent, but I'm not going to allow the advocate to represent. And so they can't be involved in this hearing. And we have run into that issue a couple of times, and it can be a problem. And so that's just, again, that's another one of those things where the conservatorship is more secure if the child could not understand a power of attorney when they signed it. Now, to talk a little bit, Estella, just since we've got time, you're talking about you considering conservatorship. There's a funny story that Myra tells about her time getting conserved, or not getting conserved, but getting conservatorship for her 3 children that had Down syndrome. And she often describes it as looking like a 3-ring circus coming into the courtroom, because she had her one adult daughter playing with Barbies and just having a grand old time, completely oblivious to everything around her, just no idea of anything what's going on. Her second adult daughter, who is screaming at her brother while also running away from the bailiff because he looks like a policeman, and yelling in the courtroom, "Police, big trouble," all over the place. And her third son, who's got his headphones on, listening to his favorite band and bopping along and singing at the top of his lungs in the courtroom while all of this is going on. And it's just a really funny picture that she paints of the one playing with her Barbies, one who's just singing along to his music, and the other one yelling at him to shut up while also yelling that she's afraid of the police. And and so then walks the 3 of them with Myra and their attorney, and the judge looks at him and says, I really hope this is going to be a short hearing. And it was, and they all got conserved. And it's one of those stories that it's a lot easier to look back on it afterwards and laugh than if you were there in the moment, I'm sure. But I do hope that if you do need to go through the conservatorship, the process is really easy and goes well for you. All right. I don't think I have anything else to share today. So while it's a little bit early, I'm going to wrap it up here.
Can you tell people that they can get the conservative documents prepared by a document preparer, which is the expensive part of conservatorships, and represent them in the court if they can't afford it?
Okay. All right. So Teresa wanted me to add, I don't know, maybe you were able to hear her, but I believe she also posted a link and a comment about it. But if you can get the conservatorship paperwork prepared by a document preparer and then represent yourself with the paperwork. And because it's the attorney in the courtroom that is the expensive part of conservatorship. So that could be a less expensive way to go about it. But I mean, it could be a little bit more pressure on you, could be a little bit more work to make sure that you get everything in exactly right. But that's something maybe to look into if you want to avoid the $10,000.
Where it's pretty obvious to the judge already.
Yeah, like I was saying, in most cases, you're not going to have people try to come in and contest your ability to be the conservator for a child. So it's probably, when there's no argument about whether or not it should be you, and it's only a matter of should this child be conserved, And if it's really obvious in that case, then yeah, you may not need an attorney to represent you in the hearing. All right. So thank you all for being here. Out of nowhere, want me to rectify what? Recertify. Okay. All right. As long as we keep getting questions, I'll keep going. Jessica said, my housing out of nowhere wants me to recertify. What is the best paperwork for IHSS to send them? They need paperwork from IHSS. Okay. Jessica, can you maybe expand on your question? I'll do my best to answer it. Your housing wants paperwork from IHSS for something. So yeah, what does it mean about recertify? If you explain that, I'll get to it. So I asked, would the regional center have info for document preparers?
Yeah, they should.
They should.
Yes, they
Okay. Teresa says they should. So
The regional center doesn't like people to get conservatorships, so.
Never got the NOA. Should I contact y'all for support? King is a Galt client. Yeah, if you didn't, if I just never sent you the NOA, absolutely. I mean, if you're a Galt client, you can absolutely reach out to us. Usually, I would say after an assessment, the NOA should come out. What I usually say is that it's not unusual for it to take 30 days to get the notice of action. Once you hit 30 days, then we start asking questions. It's not like truly weird until you get closer to like 45 to 60, but 30 is about where we would say, okay, we should reach out to the social worker and just make sure that they remembered to finish the case. Just make sure that they didn't already send it and it got lost somehow. I've definitely seen it take longer than 30 days, but that's the point where I would say, okay, we should reach out and see what's going on here. They need income info for Section 8. Well, I mean, if what they want is the income, then maybe it would be the like, I don't know how you get paid, or if you can print out like your, the checks that IHS sends you, if they would want that information more so than like your IHSS hours. That said, I don't know exactly how Section 8 housing works, but I believe IHSS, if you are a live-in provider, is non-taxable. So I don't know if Section 8 cares about taxable income or not, but if they do, you'll probably want to make sure that they're aware that, like, you can let them know what the income is, but let them know that it's not taxable. You said it never came. We are getting hours. I did get the paperwork. So they did update hours. They just never sent you the notice of action. Well, you can definitely ask them to send it again if it just never arrived. If you're happy with the number of hours they gave you, you don't necessarily have to have the NOA, but it might be good to have, especially if the housing situation, if they want the NOA and that's what they think is the best paperwork, then that's what you can give. Francis, can you explain how the new executive order for disciplinary in schools can affect those kids with disabilities, especially those who are nonverbal or have behavioral issues due to sensory dysregulation? I understand the order doesn't explicitly mention kids with disabilities, but it also doesn't exclude them. Thoughts?
Disciplinary.
I think I haven't been keeping up with it. I'm not sure what executive order you were talking about. One thing I'll say, if you want to, let me know what exactly it was. One thing I will say is that in many cases, executive orders don't really have power to make broad sweeping changes on the school level. They can put forth like how they want things to be run, and within government agencies, they can maybe make rule changes, but
As far as on the state level.
I don't know. In public schools, a lot of it's run by the state. I'm not sure how much control they would even have over what's going on. But yeah, I don't know what order exactly you're talking about. So if you want
If
clear,
she links the executive order, then maybe we can look it up for her.
yeah, if you want to either link it or describe it, we can share our thoughts at least. Julie said, my adult son just turned 18 and we had our usual IHS assessment. My son receives PS and has since he was 9. IHS said they won't accept his POA, that I must conserve him or I will lose PS. Yeah, so this is, I don't know if you were here for the whole time, but yeah, this is kind of an issue that we were talking about when it comes to IHSS and when the person reaches adulthood. Now, I'll address what is somewhat correct and what isn't correct. So when they talk about the issue of the power of attorney, this sort of goes back to what we were talking about, that if your child has had PS all the way up until up through and up including turning 18, then the county would say, and has said, and has some legal backing to say that the power of attorney isn't valid because the person signing it didn't understand it. Now, you could make the case that maybe he did understand it, but he still needs protective supervision. But in most cases, that isn't going to be the case, right? That if your child puts himself in danger and requires 24-hour supervision to remain safe, most people would say a person who fits that criteria isn't able to understand the power of attorney well enough to sign away their rights. That's why they would say he requires conservatorship. Now, the thing that I want to push back, and actually let me just put the question on the screen so people know what we're talking about. The part that the county said that I want to push back on is the idea that he would lose PS. That I don't understand why they would say that, because whether or not he's conserved could contribute to whether or not you can make decisions for him and represent him at the assessment and things like that. But whether or not he's conserved should not have any bearing on whether or not he still needs PS, right? If his behaviors are still the same, if his understanding of safety hasn't changed, then whether or not you are his conservator has nothing to do with whether or not he qualifies for protective supervision. So I disagree with them big on the idea that he would lose PS, but I do say that not just for IHS, but in other aspects of life as well, the power of attorney will get rejected for exactly that reason, because he's been on protective supervision for, I guess, 9 years now. And so at no point during that time, most judges would say, especially, that if he's been on protective supervision for 9 years, he can't have during that time signed a power of attorney and understood what it meant. So that's the reason for that, and that's the issue for it.
So the power of attorney will be thrown out, but not the PS.
So
Right?
yeah, so the power of attorney would get thrown out in this case, but I don't think the PS should be. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I see that there was the link was posted to that executive order. I can't open it from here, but Teresa, could you open it and just let me know what it says?
Is it this?
Teresa also posted another link about a document preparer in California. And as she said, we don't know them. We don't know exactly what they do. So, do some research, and maybe this is just one example of one that could assist with doing that for conservatorship. All right.
No risk to children's safety and well-being.
Okay.
So they won't tolerate risks to children's safety and well-being in the classroom that results from the application of school discipline based on discriminatory and unlawful equity ideology.
Okay. So I think I'll have to read it more. Francis, is to your question, I'll have to read it more. But I wouldn't worry too much about how it's going to affect disabled kids. For one thing, because the laws governing services and supports for disabled children in public school is already very established and is already written into law. And so this on just first glance strikes me as sort of a as a just a policy kind of thing, and not something that can overwrite all of these special needs laws that already exist. But I'll have to research what exactly it's talking about, and then if we have any further thoughts, we'll leave a comment later after the live. Jessica has another question. So this is cool. The question: do you receive income from in-home support services for caring for a developmental disabled family member? Is on the Housing Authority individual declaration. Are you saying does it count as income, like taxable income, if it's a family member? Housing Authority. So I don't know what the Housing Authority individual declaration is. I've not heard of that before, but I'm going to just answer what may or may not be your question, but I'll answer something. Hopefully this is your question. As far as whether or not income is taxable with in-home support services, it all depends on whether or not the provider lives in the same home as the recipient, and not whether they're related. Like you can be a provider for a family member or for a non-family member, regardless of relationship status or what exactly their disability is. You can be their provider.
She's saying that question's been posted on their website.
What?
She's saying that this question is on the Housing Authority's website about IHSS.
Oh.
I think that's what she's saying. Jessica?
Oh, okay. Well, maybe Teresa's right that you're just sharing a question that is on that place, Housing Authority individual declaration. But yeah, to finish what I was saying, whether a family member or not, you can the income is non-taxable if you live in the same home as your recipient. I don't know if that answers your question, or if maybe you didn't have a question, you were just sharing a question. I'm not sure maybe if Teresa was right or not, but thank you for sharing one way or another. No, just tell you is already on the application. It was a statement, not a question. You're awesome. Okay, thank you, Jessica, for sharing it. My reading comprehension is not so good with it. When I don't have Caleb here to like bounce stuff off of, he understands a lot of this stuff more than me. He has a lot more experience than I do with these lives, and so he's more prepared to know what some of these things are that I haven't heard of before. But we're about running out of time. I don't want to step on Nicole's toes, so I'm gonna wrap up now. But I will, for people who didn't see at the beginning, let you know that we do have a couple events coming up in June, early in June, in San Bernardino. We're going to be doing two things. One is on Saturday the 7th. I believe it's the 7th, but it's that weekend. We're going to be at a resource fair hosted by the regional center in that area. And then the next day at the Doubletree in San Bernardino, we're going to be hosting our own event, a seminar where we're going to be sharing the same kind of information about SSI, IHSS, WPCS, and transition to adulthood, all these same topics. And you'll be able to hear from Myra Galt, our founder and owner and biggest expert. Yeah, the big papa, whatever here. Well, it's free. Just you have to sign up on our website. We'll have links to it. And then the other one, the resource fair, is probably also free. I'm guessing to attend.
Yeah, it's put on by the regional center.
Yeah, down there. That one's also going to be free. So if you're in San Bernardino area, we got a full weekend for you. You can come on down and join us for both those events. So thank you again all for watching. Share this with anyone that you think needs to see it. And I believe Q&A is going to be next week. Is that right?
Yep.
Next week, we're doing Q&A. Me and Caleb will be back, and we'll be taking any questions you got. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.